boys and girls, today we are going to talk about that short I vowel sound as well as the long I vowel sound. Remember, the short I says I, like in this word, pin. But just like you learned with the letter A, you learned about this guy, our Bossy E, right? Well, this Bossy E, he tells that vowel to change. He tells that vowel to say its name. So what happens with our Bossy E is that he comes to the end of a word, he jumps right on, and he says, "Hey, you better say your name, and I'm not talking." So what does that mean? That means that our I is not going to say I anymore. It's going to say I. So let's read this word together. Pine. What's the word? Pine. So that Bossy E is silent, but he tells that I that he has to change its sound. So now he's an I. So let's look here. This word is bit. That I in this word is making the short I sound, I. But along comes that Bossy E and he says, "Hey, you better say your name and I'm not talking." So now we've went from bit to bite. Say that with me, bite. So our I now says its name. Let's read this word, dim. In this word, the I makes the short vowel sound, dim. But guess what we're going to do? That Bossy E is going to come on by. He's going to go to that end of that word, and he's going to say, "Hey, you better say your name, and I'm not talking." So guess what happens? That I now says I. Let's read this word together. Dime. So do we hear that E on the end? No. We hear the I. Let's look here. This word is Tim. Tim's a name, isn't it? In the name Tim, the I makes the I sound. That's the short I. But guess what? Along comes that Bossy E and he says, "Hey, you better say your name and I'm not talking." So guess what happens? That I, that I now says I. So let's read this word together. Time. So now Tim is no longer, now Tim is turned to time, so this is not a name. So it's not capitalized anymore, is it? So we need that lowercase t. All right, let's look up here. Let's read this word together. Rip. In this word, the I makes the short I sound. Let's add that Bossy E to the end. And he says, "Hey, you better say your name, and I'm not talking." So guess what happens? The I says I. Let's read that together. Ripe. What's that word? Ripe. All right, let's look here at this next one. This has a blend, doesn't it? Okay? This says grip. Grip has the short I. It says I. Grip. Let's add that Bossy I to the end. He says, you can say it with me, "Hey, you better say your name, and I'm not talking." So now the I says I. Let's read this word together. Gripe. What's that word? Gripe. Good job. All right, let's read this word. Ready? Kit. That I is making the short vowel sound. I. Kit. Let's add that Bossy E, and he says, "Hey, you better say your name, and I'm not talking." So now our I says I, and we would read this word, kite. Read it with me, kite. Boys and girls, we just learned more about this Bossy E. We have learned that the E, when it comes on the end of the word, it tells that vowel to say its name. That vowel switches its sound. And you don't hear that bossy E at the end, do you? Let's practice by reading our words one last time together. Ready? Pine, bite, dime, time, ripe, gripe, kite. Boys and girls, thank you for working with me on that bossy E. Make sure when you see words in your reading that have an E at the end, check that vowel. See if that vowel will say its name.